If you're wondering how you can be successful in business and have a balanced family life, then look no further than the author of Enjoy Success Today. Jared James, welcome to our show.
How are you, Keon?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Now, by the age of 27, you had a best-selling book, built one of the largest and most successful real estate firms in New England,
Right.
and was voted the number one realtor under 30 in the whole of the country by
Right.
Realtor magazine.
Right.
And somehow you managed to prioritize and have your wife and 2 kids as number one. I mean, how did you manage that?
That was really just for book sales. I figured it sounded nice, but
No, but seriously.
no. The truth is that when I went into it, it's like anything. When you don't plan, you pretty much plan to fail. And I went into it, and I got into real estate because I wanted to, be a family man. I wanted to be a husband, a father before I was a business person. So I went in with a plan, and I said, here's what's great about this industry. I can make my own schedule. I can work as much as I want to or as little as I want to, and my success or my failure is my fault. And so when I got in, that sounded great. And I was kind of building things, and I was home for dinner and doing everything. And then it wasn't long before things really picked up, and I got really busy. And all I did at that point was I went back to my core value and that goal of why did I get into this business. And what I did that I think so many people forget to do is that I remembered why I got into that industry. So when the temptation hit for me to really start working like crazy and working every night and working every weekend, I just went back to my sole focus. Why am I in this business? And so from there I worked backwards and started figuring out, okay, how can I continue to make more income and decrease the amount of time it takes to do that?
Tell us about your humble origins, because you certainly didn't come from a silver spoon background, as your book mentioned. How did you get into real estate?
When I was a child, my mother was actually a realtor, and I was her unpaid assistant for many years, So I kind of learned about the business, and I learned about kind of the old school way of doing things. And when I got into real estate, the nice thing was that I was open to the newer technologies and the newer ways of business. And what I did was I kind of found the synergy between the two, kind of the old school with the new school and what actually works. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I always loved real estate. And even when I was working in other jobs and I was really successful in these other jobs, I still just kind of always went back to real estate. I got my license part-time just to buy investments and be involved. And I always say, if you want to know what your passion is, kind of think about what you do when it has nothing to do with pay or anything else. What is it that you keep coming back to? What is it that you keep wanting to do? And real estate was it for me.
Because you started when you were only, 22? You went to university.
Right.
What degree did you study?
I got a marketing major, actually. I was a marketing major.
That helps
Yep.
in this business.
Yes, it does.
And then, the average age of a real estate agent is 50 or something?
52.
Most people get in after they've done a number of different things.
Yep.
Was it difficult to establish yourself as a realtor?
Completely. And again, I'm somebody who's always educated myself, and I knew what I was getting into. The average age of a realtor, according to NAR, the National Association of Realtors, was 52 years old. So here I was, less than half the age of all of these people, and I knew that there was going to be some obstacles that I had to overcome. People see you and they say, oh, you're great, I like you, you're just like my grandson. But then, they don't want you to sell their $500,000 house.
Absolutely.
So what I always say that there was 3 components that I knew that I had to have in order to be successful in real estate and to get these people to use me. One was that I had to be likable right off the bat. It's one of the biggest parts of business that people leave out is the likability factor.
Absolutely.
They work on all these other skills and negotiations and contracts and everything, and they leave out these personality traits that they can change. And everybody will say, well, I just am who I am, and that's how it is. And they say that all the way to being broke to the bank. They never change anything. And the truth is, if you started to look at yourself, if you're somebody that just blats at the mouth and says stupid things all the time, you can change that. And that's probably not going to help you if you do those kind of things. The second thing was that I knew people had to trust me. They had to know that even at a young age that I had their best interests at heart. And that wasn't difficult for me to do because I was sincere when I was out there meeting with these people. And the third, and especially as a young person, which was probably the most important, was that they had to believe that I could do the job. Okay, so if I only had 1 and 2 and they liked me and thought of me or whatever, they'd invite me to a picnic, but they wouldn't have me sell their house. So I had to find a way to get that third part, which is to prove to them that I could do the job. And I did that in many ways, by the way I dressed, kind of appearing older than I was and almost having a chameleon effect where whoever I was talking to, I mirrored. And I related to them, and I talked like them, and I acted like them. And I gave them a level of comfortability. So it was really amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, your wife was supportive from the very beginning because you're already married at the time.
Yes.
When you were 22.
Yes.
Talk
married
about
at 21. Yeah.
21.
Yep.
Talk about the balance aspect because I read it in your book. And one of the things that really stood out for me was the quote that said, "One of the greatest callings you can have is to raise children."
Right.
Tell us about that. I mean, it's such an important message today.
Right.
and you know, you had children pretty young, and you were getting into a very relatively, you know, risky sort of business. It's sales. Right?
Right.
If you don't make the sale, you don't get paid.
Right.
You get money.
Exactly.
I mean, so, you know, in terms of the support from your wife, what was that like?
It's funny because the business I did get into, let's face it, it was one of those where they say, well, there's no income restrictions, which usually means you're going to be broke within a couple months, okay? And that's the kind of business I chose to get into. And I was in a job that made a lot of money and was doing well. I was actually in line to take over the company I was at. It was really amazing. But it wasn't what I loved. It wasn't what I wanted to do with the one life that I get. And that's what it came down to for me. It was one life. And so my wife and I, she was really supportive, and I had built up a certain track record with her that she knew that, you know, pretty much when I had said something was going to happen, it was going to happen. You know, it wasn't just blind faith. It was, she had seen the track record. And so we had a talk one night, and we talked about this. And basically I said to her, I said, look, if this doesn't work out, give me 6 months. And if it doesn't work out, you know there's a million other jobs I can get. I was getting offered jobs all the time. My old company would probably take me back as well. But isn't it more important that I pursue my passion and do something that I love to do? Isn't that going to make for a better life for both of us? And really the potential is that I can make a lot more money doing it anyway. And so I made sure before I took that leap that she was 100% on board, because the last thing I needed to do was to go to work in real estate and have a bad day and come home and hear "and I told you so." You know, that's not the kind of support I needed, and luckily she didn't do that.
And she believed you,
yeah.
100%. Let's take a short break, and we're here with the author of Enjoy Success today, How to Start and Build a Thriving Business. If you've just started a business or getting into business, thinking about getting into business, get this book. It will change your life. Don't go away. Welcome back to The New Millionaire. Jared, before we get into the coaching and speaking work that you're doing a lot today, tell us a bit about how you actually started from nothing into the #1 realtor, you know, voted by Realtor magazine.
Okay. You know, it's funny because part of what you need to do to be successful is obviously see the people that went before you and in a way start to do what they do. But at the same time, I started to look at it, and my mind has always worked a little bit differently. And I looked at some of these people that were very successful. But I looked at how long it took them, and I said, you know, I want that success, but I don't want it to take 30 years. And so I kind of, in a way, kind of dropped the whole follow the herd mentality. You know, it's what I always call the follow the herd mentality is you do what the herd does. The only problem with that is that you're only going to get to where the herd got to. You know, and again, I knew it didn't want me to. I knew that I didn't want to take 30 years to get there. So I looked at a lot of what a lot of these successful realtors did and successful business people, and it was a little bit of the eat up the meat, spit out the bones. And I took what they used, but then I also tried to do things differently. You know, and just a perfect example of that was, you know, they would spend so much time on their marketing and on their, you know, sales aspects and their sales skills and all these different kinds of things. And I put my focus in a little different place. I said, okay, if I want to be successful, then what I need to do is I need to make everybody around me successful. And so what I did was I took the focus off of myself and started to focus it on all the businesses that had surrounded themselves around me and decided to align with me. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to make it my goal to make every single one of them successful, and then just kind of take advantage of the whole reap what you sow aspect.
Give me an example. So you focused on relationship building.
Yes.
In terms of how can it help the mortgage broker become more successful, and so on and so forth.
Perfect example. Take, for example, an insurance agent, okay? I decided that, you know, obviously I couldn't give them a lot of referrals at this point because I didn't have any deals. I didn't have any transactions. So what I did was I got creative, and I went to everybody I knew, and I said, look, it's going to take 5 minutes. I want you to go to that insurance agent and get a quote. Okay? And I don't care if you want to do it, I don't care whatever, just do it, okay? And so you have like 30 people that goes to the insurance person and goes and gets a quote. And does every one of them use that insurance person? Probably not. A lot of them did because they realized they could save money and it wouldn't cost them anything. But whether that insurance person closed those deals or not, it doesn't matter. I got credit for the referral, and the natural inclination when you're doing this with people is that they're going to reciprocate. So as I'm out there trying to make her as successful as I can, her natural inclination is to start to send me business because she feels like she needs to reciprocate. So I started doing things like that.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of people don't do these, you know, things about thinking of other people first to kickstart your own business. How did you learn that? Was it something you read in a book? Were there mentors? Were there mentors in the industry took you under their wing and said, look, this is what you should do to get started?
You know, it would sound great right now for me to say that, you know, there was a mentor that taught me that and whatever, but there was definitely people I looked at, but everybody was pretty much industry standard. They all said the same things, they all did the same things, and much of it worked, so I'm not putting that down, but I knew that I had to think outside the box, and I knew that what I wanted to do and what I wanted to create really hadn't been done that much. It really hadn't. There was nobody for me to look at that had done it. So again, like I mentioned earlier, I took a lot of what they did, but then I just started thinking outside the box, and I just started, I'd stay up at night and I just brainstorm. And I would play out in my head. A lot of what I talk about in the book is successful people are able to play out situations in their head. And I just played it out. If I did this with these people, how's it going to turn out? And then what are they going to do next? And what's going to happen as a result of that? And when I came to the scenario that would work out best, that's the one I went with.
Interesting. And you talk about 10 traits of success. Let's talk about a couple of them for our viewers here.
Okay. One of the things I talk about, and I think is probably the one that I've gotten the most attention on, would probably be the focus on your weaknesses. Find out what your weaknesses are.
Don't they always say focus on your strengths?
Focus on your strengths, and I don't really think that's the case. Your strengths are there. Your strengths are there usually because they're God-given or they're innate or whatever they may be, and they really got to where they were without too much focusing to begin with. But if you really want to, well-round yourself a little bit more and get stronger, start focusing on your weaknesses. Figure out where you're weak, and if you don't know where you're weak, go get into a fight with your wife.
Talk about your own weaknesses. I mean, you mentioned you're a bit antisocial. I mean, come on, you're a real estate agent. How can you be like, hiding in the corner when you're having, family and friends over? What's
observant
up
of
with
you.
that?
I'm even to this day probably very antisocial. My father and I joke around all the time that we were given a personality, but you need to back us into a corner before you'll see it. Because it's just I would literally lay in a cave and hang out by myself all the time.
You're a nerd. Not quite, right?
My wife, when we got married, Italian lady, loves the parties, loves the picnics, loves the get-togethers, loves the social. I thought I was going to jump off a cliff. Like, I can't do this. Go and hang out all the time.
You're kidding me. You're in sales.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But again, to have the kind of success that I had, which is abnormal, you have to do the abnormal things. You can't just kind of be, like I mentioned, the follow the herd type of person. And I think that's how we had the perfect synergy where these different personality traits mixed with the different ideas that I had really came together and were dynamite.
So really focused on other people, but how did you, fix or, overcome your weaknesses of being, antisocial? Your wife really helped you get out there?
Yep. Well, have I fixed it? That's the first question. I've definitely gotten better. Because what I found is, it's funny, some of the things that you not necessarily fear the most, but that you dislike the most, are many times things that you haven't experienced. You've got this thing within your head that tells you you're not into something. It's what many times it's what you associate with that particular thing. And I associated get-togethers and picnics and these kind of things with the same old conversations over and over again in boring conversation. That's just the reality of it. But what I found was that as my wife started getting me out there and pushing me out to different things, was that I actually made some relationships that I now to this day enjoy friendships with people and learn things from people and enjoy the experiences that I never would have ever gotten the opportunity to be a part of if I just stayed in my box.
People actually found you were actually a likable guy.
Actually, I would say I've fooled enough people all this time, but
but the main thing that I think I got out of this was focusing on other people and helping them become successful, and,
no doubt
by
about
doing
it.
that.
That's where true joy comes from in my mind. Anybody can make their own self successful. You work hard enough, you work long enough, it's going to happen. But it's a unique person, it's a unique personality trait or personality that can actually expand beyond that. It's like the great basketball player that makes the whole team better, who's looked at much better than just the great basketball player. I've always wanted to be that great team player where I not only succeed, but all the people around me do as well.
Interesting. Let's take a break. And when we come back, tell us about the new mission you're embarking on, empowering and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs with your message of success in business and success at home. We'll be right back. Today's special guest on The New Millionaire is an inspiration to thousands of business owners who want real guidance to balance their business and family life. Now, Jared, you have a special message that really needs to get out there, especially in today's world where the family unit is breaking down.
Right.
How did you get into the speaking world? How did you get this first book published?
It's a good question. I actually got a call about 18 months ago from an editor out of New York that asked me to write a book. And my response was pretty much what most people who are listening to this would be. What are you, nuts? I think I'm getting punked by some friends or something. And at first I actually said no. thinking that I was too busy. Who am I to be writing this? You know, all the normal thoughts that would come through your head. You know, many of my childhood friends would be surprised to hear that I read a book, let alone wrote a book, you know. And so after some talking, and then she said, let's go to lunch. We went to lunch and we chatted, and she basically convinced me it was a good idea. And so she actually came from the publishing world, worked with some major publishers and knew what they were looking for. And from then on, I decided to sit down and said, okay, if nothing else, it's good for credibility. And shortly after, it became a bestseller after it came out, which shocked everybody, or at least it shocked me. So.
And the speaking
speaking really came once the book had come out, once the awards had come. It really started locally with people calling and saying, hey, would you come and speak at our event? And me thinking, you know, what am I? Again, I turned down some stuff, but then it was like, okay, I'll go and do it. And went and did it, and it went really well. You know, you're getting 4 different places that are booking you off of those ones, and then more and more. And I remember the first time someone called me and said, from some other part of the country, what do you cost us to come and speak? I remember thinking, are you serious?
Because you were doing it for free before?
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm thinking, what do I cost to come and speak? I hung out at a picnic over the weekend for 8 hours for free, you know? What do I cost? And so this whole other world opened up where I started traveling and speaking and talking to large groups, and one thing led to another, and more people were calling.
And you obviously were a natural. Did you get any coaching, speaking? I mean, did you ever wanted to become a speaker as a kid or growing up or whatever?
Are you crazy?
No?
They say they say the number one fear in life, you know, ahead of anything, death, anything, is humiliation, which is why so many people are afraid of public speaking, because you open up the risk of humiliation. And I was no different than anybody else.
And you were the shy guy.
Oh.
And so you didn't actually have any coaching at all?
No, none.
How'd you get so funny?
How do I answer that? I don't think I'm that funny. You know, there's
but you mix humor into the whole...
You have to. You have to, because one of the things that you'll notice throughout the book, and you'll notice just from knowing me, I'm an observer. I observe everything, but I don't just observe, I learn. And one of the things I observed from some of the people that were on stage and people I had watched was that I had seen great speakers that were boring, you know, because you have to mix in the entertainment value. So what I found was that what I needed to do within my speeches, my presentations, was that I needed to educate, which is smart, but I also needed to entertain and inspire/motivate. I needed those 3 things: the inspiration, motivation, the education, and then the entertainment. Because without the entertainment value, no one's going to bring you back. It's one thing for you to do a good job, say some good things, but if you ever notice somebody can say the exact same thing as someone else and yet you take it so much different, or you actually act on it, and usually humor is a gateway to get you to do that. If you get someone to laugh, they like you, they relate to you, and usually they'll follow through and do what you ask them to do.
Interesting. So. Now, you know, you've been speaking for about a year now, you've been saying. And you know,
you're speaking my whole life. But
that's a good point.
Getting paid for the
you are fast. No, but you only speak for about an hour, half an hour sort of thing. But how do you really transform people? I mean, is it you've got the books, you've got some CDs and so on, but you also provide extra support and coaching. Tell us about that.
Yep. Well, what we do is we generally do about 60 to 90-minute presentations. And what I always say is people will try to label you as an inspirational or a motivational speaker, and I say that's just not true. What I do is I teach principles, because motivation doesn't transform people. Motivation makes them feel good until 2 hours later when they forget what you said and they're not in the moment anymore. Okay, they're not in the energy of the room. But principles can transform lives. So if you can start to give people principles that work, that's where they can actually take them back and apply them and start to see real change. And that's really what our coaching programs were all about. You know, we started getting in with realtors and we started saying, hey, the basic foundation of it was, look, the success that I had, I honestly believe to this day, not that I'm nothing special, but I'm nothing special. I don't go and change into a cape in a phone booth before I go to work every day. You know, not unlike anybody else who we coach. There were exact principles and exact things, exact systems that we followed that would work for me and would work for anybody else.
They basically took what got you from 0 to 5 years to one of the top realtors, and you cookie cutted it, and you're out teaching people.
1 plus 1 equals 2. It's that simple. If you want to get to 2, here's what 1 is and here's what the other one is. That's simple.
To get people accountable, and this is one of the biggest challenges that coaches and teachers and speakers have, how do you ensure that? How do you get people to follow through?
Well, that's what coaching is, though. I always tell people, I mean, Tiger Woods, for example. Do you realize Tiger Woods has missed the cut at a major once in his career? And it was 3 years ago at the British Open. You know, it's the one time he didn't bring his coach. Now, is that coach going to teach Tiger Woods anything about golf? Probably not. But it's the accountability. That's really our role. It's that once a week on the phone where we're following through.
You?
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll have me, and then we have our certified coaches that will do it as well, because obviously there's only so many hours in the day. But I've got people that I coach as well. And yeah, we get on there and we're basically going through what we went over last week. Did you do A, B, and C of what we said you were going to do? What's the results been? And we're actually holding them accountable. And then we're saying for the next week, similar to when you're in school, here's your assignment for next week.
Makes sense.
Now you have to do it. If you're not going to do it, you're paying a whole lot of money to not do what I'm telling you to do. So that's up to them if they don't want to do it. But I find reminding people what they're paying for this, that if you ever notice if somebody goes to an event for free, half of them don't show up?
Yes.
Because there's no value there.
Absolutely.
So you bring them back to what they're paying and show them the value.
Final words. What advice would you give an upcoming realtor who wants to be successful, wants balance in their life? What would be your advice?
Picture your life 15 years from now and then build towards it. That's simple. I knew that before I had kids that I wanted to have kids. I didn't fall into it. I didn't accidentally get someone pregnant. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. And so what that means is that I mentioned to you earlier that it was my goal early on, and I would constantly say this in my head, that my goal was to be a greater husband, greater father than I am a business person. And that didn't mean that I had to be a bad business person. It meant that I had to be a greater father and husband. So every decision I made up until that point affected my kids, whether they were born or not. And patterns that I started before they were born are probably ones I'm going to carry through once they're born. So knowing it up front, know what you want 15 years from now and start to build towards that, whether you see the reality of it or not.
Terrific. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jared, and for sharing your wisdom and incredible insights. I recommend everyone who's watching get this book if you want to get into business or you're a real estate agent. Where can you buy this?
You can go anywhere. You can go Amazon, you can go Barnes & Noble, you can go to bookstores, you can go everywhere.
And they can go to your website,
My website?
jaredjamestoday.com.
Yes.
Terrific. And that's another edition of The New Millionaire. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you soon.